Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
So, Stephanie, are you a superstitious person?
No.
Do you kind of believe in sort of magics and people can do spells and some weird stuff goes on?
I do believe in ghosts, but no, I don't believe in like witches and wizards and stuff. I think that gets a little scary if it's really dark magic, but it's kind of fun. I love Harry Potter stuff.
Okay.
Come on.
So what about like a Ouija board where you get the thing moving?
No way. That's the devil. I'm not getting involved.
Okay, so you do think there's something a bit weird?
Well, I've seen some weirdness. Yeah, I think it's a little weird. Yeah, stay away from that.
Okay.
Do you believe?
No, I don't believe in it.
Oh.
I'm too rational, too scientific. I think it can all be explained away between people having a bit of a sort of a moment where they believe it's true and then it kind of carries on and snowballs from there.
Oh, I have stories to tell you, young man.
Okay, well, this article is, it's going to be all about witches.
Cool.
And every different kind of witch, because the idea of what is a witch has sort of changed a lot over the last few thousand years. It's gone through various different forms and shapes. And so we're sort of going to follow that as to what they were, what they are, what they have been in the past, and how people have approached the whole idea of witches and witchcraft. So let's read through the article and find out the first part of the history of witches. If asked to imagine a witch, most people would probably picture an ugly old woman with a broomstick, a black cat, and a bubbling cauldron into which she throws eye of newt and toe of frog. This quote is from Shakespeare's Macbeth, and the tale's three witches simultaneously drew on and helped shape popular perception. In stories, witches cast evil spells and put curses on whole villages. In history, on the other hand, they have been viewed as everything from wise women to devil worshippers and followers of modern spiritual beliefs. The earliest kinds of witches in Europe were men and women who knew a mixture of folk medicine and folklore. They weren't called witches, but rather wise folk, cunning folk, and a host of other names. They knew how various plants could be used to treat illnesses and heal wounds. Some also claimed the ability to see the future or remove curses too. They were like local doctors who could deal with both medical and supernatural problems, both of which were important in those superstitious times. Over time, however, Christianity spread across Europe and replaced these older beliefs. Any kind of magical knowledge was considered evil, and those who possessed it were said to be in league with the devil. Religious leaders used accusations of witchcraft to stir up fear and hatred of other religious groups, for example, during the religious wars between Protestants and Catholics. This often led to mass witch hunts, in which hundreds of innocents were tried and convicted of witchcraft. Evidence at witch trials was generally no more than stories made up by frightened locals, yet this didn't stop many of the defendants from being burned alive, a common, though horrific, method of execution for witches.
So, welcome to the Witching Hour. We're here with the author of this particular article.
I had fun writing this.
Yeah.
It was interesting research.
So, what is the Witching Hour?
It's midnight. The witching hour is midnight, and it's the middle of the night. It's the time when people believe dark magic can actually take place. People can cast spells, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's just basically another fancier sort of literary kind of name for midnight.
Interesting, huh? Well, with dark magic or black magic, we'll often use that name, black magic, it never seems to take place in bright light. It's always in the dark.
Yeah, it's not on a summer's day or a spring morning.
No. So we've got a question here for you. What would come to mind if you were to imagine a witch? This is the kind of witch I imagined, the one that you've written here. Most people would probably picture in their minds an ugly old woman with a broomstick. She'd be kind of bent over that big pot. That big pot, black pot, is called a cauldron. Bubbling means she's got something in there that's boiling away. Her black cat is with her, and she's throwing different kinds of ingredients, you could say, into her big black pot. Her recipe includes eye of newt and toe of frog. The reason there are quotation marks around those particular items is that they're in the recipe. I said to Pat when we started, I didn't even know what a newt was. I had to look it up. Another word for that I'm more familiar with is salamander. I'm assuming this comes right from Shakespeare.
Yep, that is from his play Macbeth. Yeah, newts are kind of like, they're not quite lizards. They're slightly more like frogs than they are lizards. They live in ponds. They're quite slimy. People in the UK keep them as pets sometimes.
You're kidding.
Yeah, and they're known because, like, if you cut their tails off, the tails can grow back.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, so they're just little lizard-like things like that. They live in water. But yeah, the quote, eye of newt and toe of frog, this is what these three witches in Macbeth, they kind of sing and chant as they're throwing all this stuff in the cauldron at the start of the first act of the play. So this quote is from Macbeth, and when Shakespeare wrote Macbeth, he used ideas that people had about witches, and he, at the same time, which is what simultaneously means, he simultaneously drew on and helped shape popular perception. So when we say he drew on something, means he used something as a source. So Shakespeare knew that this is what people believed about witches at that time in England. That's what he thought they did. That's what everybody believed witches were. Old, evil women who used bits of animals to cast evil spells and do curses. But of course, because he wrote this play, which became super famous, hundreds of thousands of people saw it.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's actually shaped perception. Perception is what you think of something. It's what you believe it is. It's how you see it. And so because of Shakespeare's play, that's what a lot of people think of with witches. That idea was made stronger by Shakespeare's play. So even though he was using stuff that people already believed, he helped make that belief about witches stronger.
Yeah, we still do that today with our TV programs and movies. It kind of takes what culture's giving us today, but then it makes it stronger or weakens a perception, perhaps. So it's your point of view. So it helps shape how people look or think of witches. We've had a lot of movies on witches, too. Some are funny, which are always great. So in stories, these witches cast evil spells. We use that verb cast, just saying they make those spells. They say these words out loud, and it's supposed to put a curse on either an individual they don't like, or maybe they're angry at, or in this case, it says whole villages. A curse is those words that you often see witches or even wizards. That's the male form. They say these words out loud, and it's supposed to bring supernatural powers and black magic into play. Maybe, let's see, let's think of a particular curse.
I think a lot of it is to do with things like all the cows or the sheep start dying and things like that.
That's a bad curse.
Yeah, so a curse is something that causes a lot of bad luck.
Or maybe you take a really nice-looking prince and turn him into a frog.
Yep.
That would be a curse put on him.
Something like that,
yeah. I've seen those in movies. So in history, on the other hand, they have been viewed as everything from wise women to devil worshippers, yes, and followers of modern spiritual beliefs. So we've got one idea of where we get this image of a witch from Macbeth. And then in history, on the other hand, they've been viewed as lots of different things. We've got a range of things from wise women.
Which is good.
Which is great. Yeah, because back then, they didn't have a lot of modern day medicine. So a lot of these women who knew how to use herbs, or as you would say, herbs.
Yes.
They're both correct pronunciations. They were viewed as being kind of magical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no one understands how it works.
No.
So, it must be magic.
Yeah, it's just science. So if you worship the devil, you can actually make that into a title for someone, a devil worshiper, and also followers of modern spiritual beliefs. Spiritual here just has to do with what you believe about things you can't see sometimes. So I say I would describe myself as being spiritual. I believe in God. But you don't have to actually believe in a particular God or even someone like Jesus Christ. You could just believe in powers that are out there, you know, spiritual powers that affect the human spirit.
Yeah, and the soul. It's a sort of concentrating on the soul, what the soul is, what it does, and other sort of similar religious beliefs. We'll kind of get into that in day 2 of this article when we look into how people have used sort of witchcraft in the modern era. So let's go back to the start of this. We're thinking of witches as wise women. The article says the earliest kinds of witches in Europe were men and women, so it's both, who knew a mixture of folk medicine and folklore. So folklore is traditional beliefs and stories of that are in various cultures. They're passed down by word of mouth rather than kind of taught in schools or read in books. So it's you learn it from your father who learned it from his father or who learned it from the old man who lived in the cave, that kind of stuff. And folk medicine is, oh, this plant can be used to cure this, or if you've got this problem, you want to go and sit in the hot spring for a day. And it's that idea that people have learned through kind of trial and error what works for various diseases.
Well, in actual fact, Chinese medicine is kind of like this,
it is, it's
right?
folk medicine.
Yeah. So the people that were practicing with herbs and different kind of spices, things that came from the earth naturally, they were seen as witches back then. Today, you know, they're just seen as experts, you know, in a particular type
alternative medicine.
That's right, alternative medicine, which is great. It's helped a lot of people. Well, we've got folklore, we've got folk medicine. Back then, they weren't called witches, but rather wise folk. Folk here, without the S, just means people in general. We in America, though, will often talk about, I'm going to go visit my folks. It means members of your family, but in particular, your parents.
Yes.
So if you ever hear me say, my folks are coming over to Taiwan, that would be referring to my mom and dad. But here, folk just means people in general. So we've got really wise people, people who use their knowledge in a good way. Cunning folk, kind of very intelligent, but sometimes trying to trick people.
Yeah, they have a clever way of doing things. They have the knowing, as they used to say.
Cunning could be positive and negative.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these witches were called a host of other names as well. So I've looked this up. Depending on which part of the country you're from, they had all sorts of different names and different words for them. And these people, these cunning folk, they knew how the plants, various plants, could be used to treat illnesses and heal wounds. So they could make people who were ill, people who had illnesses, sicknesses, diseases, they knew what they could do to make them feel better.
I would think back then that would make witches people that you really loved if they could take away some of your pain. We're going to find out more about witches, but first we're going to take a quick break.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. 今天我们要看的是第1单元。好，这个单元呢很有趣，因为我们要谈的主题是女巫。好，说起来呢，其实在现在跟过去对女巫的看法是有很大的区别的。他文章一开始就说了 if asked， 这个 if asked 假如被问到，好，那这个句构上看到了 if 后面直接加一个过去分词，表示被动的 asked， 那我们知道这肯定是属于分词构句。那这个分词构句里面主词不见了，当然主词跟后面主要句说的 people 是一样的。换句话说 if people are asked to， 如果你被问到要想象女巫的话，那你会怎么说呢？当然这个形象是大家心里有的，就是一个老妇人带着扫把，然后有一只黑猫，还有呢冒泡的大锅。好，这个形象怎么来的？他后面有说，他说当然跟 Shakespeare Macbeth 里面提的3位女巫有关。好，提到这3位女巫之外，那我们说我们对女巫的形象就从那里开始。接下来就提到 in stories， 在故事里头，我们知道女巫的形象是会施展魔法，然后诅咒村庄。接下来他说 on the other hand， 这个转折词就说明了刚刚前面提到 某一方面，接下来要谈另一种，相对于前面说故事里女巫的形象，这里要谈的另一种就是历史上的形象。历史上的形象呢，其实有好有坏，有智慧的女性的这种形象，也有恶魔崇拜者这种形象。好，那我们注意到这边还有一个片语，就是 everything from blah 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 to。 其实这个片语呢，说起来就是从 A 到 B 之间的所有的全部。换句话说，这一切的一切，什么都有。下面就提到了在欧洲早先的女巫，其实她所讲的男女都有，而且他们呢不但知道民俗疗法，她也知道很多民俗的传说。 They weren't called witches, but rather wise folk。 这边看到了 weren't， 这是一个否定哦， not A but rather B， 不是 A而是 B。 当时可不是叫她女巫，不是叫她 witch， 而是说他们是 wise folk， 这个就是表示聪明人。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi everyone, welcome back. So we're looking at witches in their kind of oldest pre-Christian version.
Yeah.
So they could use herbs and plants to heal wounds. We also see that some of these wise folk also claim the ability to see the future or remove curses. So this kind of made these wise folk, they were like the local doctors.
Yeah.
But they didn't just deal with coughs and colds and broken bones and all that kind of stuff. They dealt with supernatural problems as well. You know, I think I've got a curse on me. There's a spirit haunting me. I'm going to go to the wise woman. She'll tell me what to do, that kind of thing.
Well, even in our culture here, they go to these wise women to get tips on temple. What to name their child or, things like that.
Yeah, so a lot of those old beliefs in Europe are still, similar beliefs are still seen in other parts of the world. So supernatural problems, supernatural means more than natural. Things that aren't nature, really. Things that nature cannot explain. So ghosts, we're talking gods, we're talking spirits and strange things. People believed in fairies and all sorts of creatures back then. So that counted as supernatural. You think the fairies have stolen your son? You go to the wise woman. She'll tell you how to get him back.
Some people are really superstitious, I tend to not be so superstitious. But athletes are very superstitious.
Sure.
If a pitcher won a game and he was wearing a particular pair of socks, he'll continue wearing those socks until he loses.
Yeah, and you don't talk to him if he's throwing a perfect game,
right? No, you never talk to him. So those superstitious beliefs are very much present here in Taiwan, in the culture. I have a friend of mine, she's Taiwanese, and she's really into the feng shui and, arranging her life in a certain way. She goes to the temple to pray for her kids on their college entrance exams, things like that. There's a little bit of the superstitious and spiritual in both of those things. So, this stuff is still present today. We might just call it by a different name.
Yeah, superstitious just means you have a belief in sort of things that can bring you good luck and bad luck.
Yeah.
And you make sure you do the things that bring you good and you don't do the things that bring you the bad luck.
Are you superstitious?
Not at all.
No,
I'm not.
You started saying, not at all.
Not me. No, but I have to, my wife is a bit more superstitious, so I have to sort of make sure to do the right things, not to bring bad luck for her.
Well, yeah, and you can't laugh at other people's beliefs just because you don't believe in them. I respect those things. I think it's interesting. So in our next paragraph here, it says, over time, however, Christianity spread across Europe and replaced these older beliefs. So Christianity just refers to the gospel that Jesus Christ brought and people believed in. And that kind of changed things a little bit. But, some things still hang on, of course.
Yeah, during those times, as Christianity spread across Europe, the Christian priests and the organized religion, they basically said, get rid of all the old religions. Magic and anybody who says they can do magic, that's bad, that's wrong. So it's evil magical knowledge. And anybody who claims to have magical knowledge, who possesses it, that means they have it, they own it, it's something that they they have. These people were said to be in league with the devil. So all these old wise women, all these old kind of local folk witches who could deal with superstitions, they said, no, they're in league with the devil. If you're in league with someone, you're working together with that person. You are allies. You're partners in some kind of scheme. So if people were in league with the devil was helping them out. And of course, that's bad.
Of course, that's bad. Notice we have the big capital D on devil, the bad devil. To be in league with, that's a really great phrase to pick up. A lot of our listeners probably know that MLB, which refers to baseball, is the major league or the minor league. So if you're in a league with somebody, of course, you're working together, you're playing together, you're competing. So they were in league with the devil, supposedly. Religious leaders used accusations of witchcraft to stir up fear and hatred of other religious groups. That's terrible. So if you accuse somebody, you point your finger at someone, you say, hey, they're guilty of doing this thing. Maybe there's no proof, you're just saying it. But once you accuse somebody of something, it's hard for that accusation to just magically disappear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Difficult. Sometimes it can be difficult to prove your innocence.
No, how do you prove a negative or, so we've seen a lot of accusations in the past year of sexual abuse or harassment, especially in Hollywood. Think of that. Now, witchcraft is what we call the practice of being a witch. It's witchcraft. If you stir something up, you get it started. And usually if you stir up trouble, it's a negative. It means somebody's in there trying to get people upset. And if you say the wrong things, it makes people mad. To stir up. Picture somebody, standing over that big black pot who looks like a witch and just, stirring that brew up, trying to get people upset.
Yeah,
they would stir up people with fear and hatred, which is horrible.
Yeah, I think the up part of that, because when you stir like a pot of something, a lot of the ingredients come up to the top, to the surface.
Yeah.
And so if you stir up fear and hatred, that means you're kind of talking to people and their fear and their hatred comes to the top.
That's
it
really
becomes
good.
Like highest in their brain.
Yeah.
So hatred is just the noun form of the verb to hate. If you hate somebody, you just really dislike them. You want to bring them harm. You want to see them destroyed. So hatred is just this idea that people can have, like, I hate that person. I have hatred for that person. I feel hatred toward that person. And so religious leaders would kind of try to get people to hate other groups of people to, it helped them and it helped push their own agenda. The example we give in the article is the religious wars between Protestants and Catholics, who are two different groups of Christianity.
Yeah.
The Protestants kind of went over from Germany, followed Martin Luther's ideas. The Catholics followed the Pope in Rome, and so on. But this wasn't the only example. People stirred up religious hatred of witchcraft against Jews, against Muslims, against anybody who they kind of wanted to beat, basically.
Yeah, it's true. So this often led to mass witch hunts. If there's something that is described as happening in mass, just means a lot of witch hunts were taking place. Hundreds of innocent people. Innocence can be used as a noun. It's being used as a noun here. If you're innocent, you're not guilty. You didn't do anything wrong. Well, they were tried in kind of a court of law. It was a little bit different back then, but people were sitting in judgment. They would hear the quote-unquote evidence. The evidence was usually just stories that people from the neighborhood would come and say, oh, I heard this and I saw this.
She turned herself into a dove.
Yeah. Oh. So they unfortunately were convicted of being a witch just based on these stories from people who were probably enemies of them or their family. If you're convicted, it means somebody has presented evidence or they've at least convinced a judge or a jury. In America, we have 12 people who decide if someone's guilty or not guilty, or not guilty, not innocent, but not guilty. You're convicted, it means someone's decided you are guilty, and usually there's punishment attached to that. Back then, it was pretty horrible. I would say horrific what happened to those convicted witches.
Yeah, now we talked about evidence at witch trials. We'll see more about this in tomorrow's article.
Yeah.
But it's often no more than just stories made up by locals. Yet many of the defendants, this is the people who are defending themselves in court, they've been accused, these defendants got burned alive.
Horrible.
So they were kind of tied to stakes in a big pile of wood and set on fire. And some people think, no, that never really happened. But unfortunately it did. It was common.
Yeah.
And it was also horrific. It was really horrible. It was really awful. That's what horrific means. And it was a method of execution, which is killing of somebody in a sort of very deliberate punishment kind of way.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll read news stories where they'll say the victim was executed. Typically, somebody would stand behind them and just shoot them in the head.
Yeah.
It's a pretty horrible way.
If it's the death penalty, people could be executed by lethal injection.
Which is a shot of some drug.
Chemicals. In the old days, it might have been by a firing squad or by hanging them from a rope.
Yeah,
lots of horrible ways to execute
awful,
people.
Yeah. Well, we're not done. We're going to have another day of this, and it's pretty darn interesting, I must say. But right now, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.
好，我们继续来看。那女巫在以前其实有可能是好的意思，表示聪明人 wise folk。这里说到的女巫在以前，她就是 local doctors， 就是本地的医师。可以处理医疗的问题，当然 supernatural problems 超自然问题也能解决。那这两种问题在那种迷信的时代都很重要。那我们注意到这里有一个逗点，然后接的 both of which 这样的句型其实常常看到，基本上这个 both of which指的就是前面说到的 medical and supernatural problems 这两种问题了。好，我们继续往下看，下面就要来谈一谈，女巫啊，跟基督教后来传遍了欧洲有什么关系呢？因为从那之后，女巫就好像是邪恶的，因为他们会施魔法。即使他是有智慧的人，他是懂得知识、懂得医疗的人，好像都被宗教界当作是一种恶魔的同路人了。好，那也就是在这样子的时代背景之下呢，很多的女巫都会被集体搜捕，然后被审判，然后审定有罪，然后就被用火烧死。好，我们知道这一串的历史事实，不过这边我们还要看文法的句构。文法上就提到说，好，当时宗教的这样子的背景之下，造成了集体搜捕，然后接着 in which 这边的 in which 当然指的which 就是指前面的 mass witch hunts， 也就是集体搜捕，而在这种集体搜捕里面就有很多无辜的这些女巫被审判判刑，最后甚至于就死了。那我们看看这个 in which 的结构，要记得介系词加冠带，而这个介系词的目的当然是因为跟前面所取代的这个 witch 的名词 mass witch hunts 有关，在这个搜捕里。好，那我们最后还有一个结构要注意，就是提到说女巫审判的证据呢，其实说穿了也不过是当地人他们因为害怕所捏造出来的故事而已。好，这样子的捏造出来的故事就被当证据。那提到这个片语 no more than， no more than 其实就是 simply only nothing but，只不过。好，我们今天的讲解就到这边结束，我们下次见。
Okay, so that is the end of the first part of our article on witches. We've sort of gone from them being wise folk to being devil worshippers, but they continue to change even more. But you'll have to join us tomorrow for day 2 to see what happens to them. We'll see you then. Bye for now.
Bye.